Today's video is sponsored by Nobility.co.uk, the leading company in selling legal titles in the United Kingdom. Get a 10% discount in any purchase by mentioning Death Row. A police officer serves to maintain law and order in local areas by protecting members of the public and their property, preventing crime, reducing the fear of crime, and improving the quality of life for all citizens. There are a number of different roles within the police and a clearly defined ranking system which can allow for career progression from police officer to chief constable. Together, these responsibilities are the purpose of police. The police also have the legal ability to enforce non-negotiable measures with coercion, to resolve unlawful situations. Police officers make a vow to protect and to serve. In the course of their work, they often put their lives in danger to keep citizens and communities safe. From sheriffs working in small towns to criminal investigators solving crimes in big cities, people with careers in criminal justice go to work to serve and protect our communities. And at the center of the role is community engagement. Therefore, it will never come to your mind that a police officer will betray his vows to protect society at any cost. Thomas Hartley Montgomery betrayed the trust bestowed on him to protect and serve his people as a police officer. On June 29, 1871, Sub-Inspector Montgomery, who was chronically short of funds, assaulted William Glass, a clerk employed by the Northern Bank, with a hedge knife and stabbed him through the head with a filing spike. Sub-Inspector Montgomery then stole £1,600 from the till. In the aftermath, Inspector Montgomery took charge of the investigation and briefly succeeded in deflecting suspicion from himself. Being the local RIC officer, Montgomery took charge of the investigation. However, it wasn't long until he was found out. Having asked another RIC officer during the investigation could the last person coming out of the bank be convicted if he had no blood on his clothes? It was discovered that Montgomery was the last person to come out of the bank after the murder. This, together with eyewitnesses putting him at the bank around the time of the murder, and the knowledge of Montgomery's considerable debt, led to his arrest for the murder 3 days later. 6 months after the crime, a young boy found some of the missing notes in Grangewood, and a total of £1.500 in notes and £30 in gold was discovered nearby under a large rock which had to be lifted with a crowbar. One of the weapons Montgomery used in the murder, a pruning knife, was also found nearby. However, Montgomery's subordinates ultimately learned of his financial difficulties and eyewitnesses identified him as having left the bank 1 hour before the body of William Glass was discovered. As a result, a County Tyrone coroner's inquest brought a verdict of willful murder against Sub-Inspector Montgomery. He must have been highly regarded by his superior officers in the force to have attained a senior rank at such an early age. He was, to all appearances, a successful officer, and a happily married man. However, he had found himself in financial difficulties and in his desperation at his plight, resolved to rob the local bank on that fateful summer day in the quiet village. He had hacked the teller, one William Glass, and delivered the coup de grace by piercing the bank clerk, using a metal spike. The spike, set into a wooden block, was used for filing documents. This item was standard part of office furniture in use until recent times, and Montgomery used it to pierce his victim through the ear with such force that it penetrated the hapless teller's brain. Montgomery was later to claim that his victim was already dead before the file was used. This only served to make matters worse, as it came across as a gratuitous act of sadism. Montgomery, as chief of police, then led the investigations into the robbery and murder. No one could have suspected that the local chief of police could have had any connection with such foul deeds. The inspector put the money into a satchel and hid it near a riverbank at a place called Grange Wood on the Oma side of the town. There it remained until a flood of the river carried banknotes downstream towards Newtown Stewart. Police traced the banknotes to Montgomery's cache and were able to connect him with it. The suspect was arrested and the first of his 3 trials began. Eyewitnesses recalled having seen Montgomery leaving the bank premises within an hour or so after the victim's estimated time of death. The defense claimed that there was nothing remarkable about that, given the fact that Glass, the teller, was a family friend. The jury failed to agree and a second trial was ordered. The RIC, far from closing ranks to protect one of their own officers, were determined to protect the reputation of the force and to maintain public confidence in it. The second trial was also inconclusive, and it was not until the third trial that a conviction was secured. Montgomery had claimed, in his defense, that his wife's family had been undermining him by surreptitiously dosing his food and drink with what we would today call mind-altering substances, and that these drugs had brought about a drastic change in his personality. These allegations made no impact upon the jury. After 2 inconclusive trials, Montgomery was found guilty and sentenced to death. Protesting the sentence, Montgomery pleaded that he was in a state of complete insanity for 12 months before the murder, that he lost enormous sums of money, and that this led him to become vicious and possessed with a monomania for attacking banks. Rejecting his plea, Lord Justice Barry, who had never before doomed a man to death, was affected to tears as he delivered the terrible sentence, and urged him to appeal for mercy to God. Thomas Hartley Montgomery was the only policeman to be executed in the history of policing in Ireland. He was hanged in Oma Jail on August 26, 1873. Thomas Hartley Montgomery paid the supreme penalty after 2 previous trials had proved to be inconclusive. The case had become something of a cause célèbre in Irish legal history. The facts in the case have been well attested, but many legends have accrued over the years as living memory morphed into folklore. Montgomery was a sub-inspector of the Royal Irish Constabulary. The royal tag had been bestowed by Queen Victoria a year or so earlier in recognition of the part that the Irish police played in thwarting the Fenian conspiracy, when he murdered bank teller William Glass at the Northern Bank in June of 1871. Thomas Hartley Montgomery was aged 31 at the time of the murder. The execution took place on the morning of August 26, 1873. In the early hours of that day a fierce, unseasonable storm of wind and hailstones visited the town of Oma. The local people took it as an omen. Ireland did not maintain a full-time hangman, then or since, and the execution was conducted by one William Marwood, the Crown Executioner and officially designated number 1 executioner for the United Kingdom. His last duty in Ireland was to hang 4 of the Invincibles, after the assassination of the 2 top British officials in the Phoenix Park, Dublin in 1882. Local legend has it that the hangman went straight to the Oma GNR station after the job was done, got the railway bar to open and ordered a double brandy, to steady himself. He took a scientific approach to his doleful trade and pioneered the concept of the long drop hanging. Thank you for watching Death Row.